Welcome back to Golden Rule Radio, a brief weekly summation of the precious metals markets. We'll focus on what's happening in the markets related to the metals, the news that moves their prices, and what's on the horizon next week. Today is February 8th, and in addition to the metals, we will address the normal array of fundamentals that move the metals prices. I want to start again this week briefly addressing a listener question. Hot Sauce 610 had a few questions regarding precious metals IRAs. I'm going to touch lightly on it here, specifically regarding storage, the risk of storage, and the options surrounding the same. So I think your fear is not being able to access the metals, which is a valid concern. It's the next best thing, however, to owning metals in hand. A lot of the security comes from who you store with, what the storage fees are, what the historical precedent is, but you really need to call us because we've done our research and done our homework in that regard, what trustees to use, what storage facilities to use. And when you're in the physical precious metals and are opting for storage, whether in an IRA or not, it is imperative to have a guarantee of allocated storage. With IRAs, we only recommend facilities that provide allocated storage and actually offer the client non-segregated or segregated options. So let's move on to the metals markets themselves. Let's go, Miles. Give us a little summation of what's going on.
Gold's up about 8% so far this year. We did mention a couple weeks ago the correction that we expected and did see last week. And then last week we talked about how we felt gold would continue up to around 1250, and we do see it marching up that direction at this point. I think we're in the mid 1240s now.
That's right.
Silver's up about 12% so far this year and is continuing that stair-step pattern we talked about last week. I think that pattern's going to continue for another week or two. We will see some resistance above us at some of the levels we've got here on the chart. But in the meantime, I think silver keeps growing. Platinum also up 12% this year. Just like silver continues to rise, we will see some of those levels above us show some resistance, but in the meantime, I think nothing but growth. And my personal favorite is palladium. I love when I catch an early pattern, and that head and shoulders pattern is working out beautifully. So I'd expect to see some continued sideways movement in palladium and a correction following in the next couple weeks.
Also up about 12% so far this year, though. A couple key points for those chartists of you out there. The 40-week and 65-week moving averages are very important to continue to monitor as you are looking to invest or continue to hold your metals. It's exciting to see that we're above the 65-week moving average, both in gold and silver. And as Miles alludes to, we may see a little bit of resistance as we get closer to the 40-week moving average.
On a side note, it does appear that the 40-week moving average is going to inch down to about that 1250 mark. So I do love it when you have multiple indicators all line up at the same price.
So those are opportunities to step into a market on a downturn. If this is in fact an A wave climb and we see a B decline, keep in mind those numbers and call us, and we'll be helping assist you as you step into the markets. Other markets, Miles, what's going on Dow-wise, both industrials and transports?
Dow Industrials have broken back above the 20K number, but they seem to be seeing the same resistance point they had a week or two ago. The Dow Transports, however, while the industrials have been rising, have actually been falling. So there's a couple things I wanted to point out here. Any of you budding chartists out there, anybody who ever wants to start getting into technical analysis, even fundamental analysis, I highly recommend going back and picking up Robert Rea's book, Dow Theory. Dow Theory is something worth studying to learn both the technicals and the fundamentals, and there's a couple points here that are directly from Charles Dow's theory on how markets move that I think are worth pointing out.
So even with the transports being down recently, they're still up over 1,000 points since the election, which is sort of that bullish sentiment that we've been discussing since the Trump election. And I'm anxious to see what ends up playing out, whether that can hold or not. And today is the 36th straight day without a 1% intraday move in the Dow Industrial Average, which is an all-time record. So to your point on that level trading, really flat market. And Robert's pointed that out in the last few weeks as well.
Well, and the transports always lead the industrials. That's one of those points of Dow theory worth studying. With the transports moving down and the Dow moving up, if the transports do manage to post a lower low than the previous low, as Tori mentioned, they are still running up. But if we do manage to see a lower low in the transports, we could see the Dow turn down to follow. Now, most of us trade in the industrials, not the transports, so that's where your stock portfolio could be affected. The second point of Dow theory that I'm noticing here is a drop in volume as the Dow industrial price is rising. So as the price is going up, fewer and fewer people are interested in buying that price. And as the price is going down, more and more people are interested in shorting that price. So the momentum, even though the price continues to rise, the momentum is actually pushing the market down. The transports are signaling that we could see the market turning down. And if we have a couple key things happen here in the near future, we could see the industrials and the transports begin what we think could be a very reasonable correction down in the equities market.
Thanks, Miles. So the U.S. dollar index is at 100.12 today, holding strong. However, gold continues to climb. And so it's important for our listeners to understand gold and silver do not always have to move counter to the U.S. dollar index. And there are other factors. Miles keeps talking about fundamentals, geopolitics, politics, market sentiment, debt, deficits, bonds, all have an impact on the metals, along with obviously fear, uncertainty, and next week we'll touch more on the interest rates. Interest rates are going to be critically important in the next 2 years. But while the U.S. dollar is remaining static on the dollar index, just sitting there firmly, we still continue to see gold, silver, platinum, and palladium move. So the Federal Reserve obviously is partly in control of the interest rates, but there's been a lot of tough talk this week from the Trump administration to the Fed. In fact, Patrick McHenry, the vice chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, sent Yellen a letter of admonishment, I guess you'd call it this week, right, Miles, regarding international negotiations that the Fed's conducting with no oversight. And
this
clearly
is unacceptable.
Yeah,
that was a fantastic letter. I don't know how much of it I agree with or disagree with because it didn't really sound like they were saying much specific. But it is funny to see that type of thing flying around Washington and Wall Street.
Well, it is, and it's a real challenge to the Fed's independence. And so we'll keep our eyes on more of that rhetoric coming out of Washington. And here's a quote from his letter. Despite the clear message delivered by President Donald Trump in prioritizing America's interest in international negotiations, it appears that the Federal Reserve continues negotiating international regulatory standards for financial institutions without the authority to do so.
So finally, some shots fired at the direction of the creature from Jekyll Island. I bet Ron Paul's in the background shaking his pom-poms right now.
I'm sure you're right. Well, there's also been tough talk this week coming out of the UN. Nikki Haley, our UN ambassador, also talking tough to Russia regarding Ukraine. So geopolitically, we're seeing some metals movement, I believe. Not only do you have that going on, but a record shipment of Russian missiles to Syria, the Iranian sanctions by the United States. And
well, Russia's such a large producer of precious metals, not just gold, but certainly platinum and palladium. In fact, Russia could single-handedly sink or explode the price of platinum and palladium just by their own markets, as well as buyers of precious metals, just like China has been. So anytime you see major geopolitical action in that country, you could see some movement in the metals markets.
That's right. We'll see if the Iranian tension continues to increase. The UK is having a lot of pressure put on them now by Israel to sanction as well, and eyes on that ball. So based on everything we've discussed this week, I'm going to encourage you listeners to study, to read, sit down, ponder the fundamentals that move the precious metals prices, because it's all about the long-term fundamentals. Which ones do you believe will be impactful in 2017? After you've done that, you'll have a clearer picture. And the macro, the long-term. But keep in mind the Ray Dalio quote. He's a huge hedge fund manager. He said, if you don't own gold, you understand neither history nor economics.
Like Tori said, as you study, as you read, as you continue to enjoy time in these markets with other people who also enjoy time in these markets, you'll learn things like how to add to your positions by buying in dips, when to make swaps in and out of the right product to pick up additional ounces for free, because anytime I can get gold without taking my wallet out of my pocket, I'm a pretty happy person. So we'll continue to try to give you recommendations each week. But one of the best things I can always recommend is give one of us a call. We're always willing to chat with you about your portfolio. I don't have two clients with identical portfolios. Everybody's situation's a little bit different. And we'll just continue to help teach you to take care of yourself, and we'll fill in the gaps along the way.
I'd say, too, continue to focus on the white metals if you have a performance or investment mindset. Focus on gold for more of the long-term hedge and asset preservation. And to your point, Miles, each product is different in its intentions and in its portfolio function. Thanks for listening this week. Send us your questions and make sure to follow us on Twitter at ICA Gold. Subscribe to us on YouTube by clicking the subscribe button below this video. Or give us a call, as Miles alluded to, 800-525-9556, and spend some individual time with us. Tune in next week.